I walked into my husband's office to surprise him for his birthday, but I ended up destroying his entire career instead. The cake box hit the floor before I even knew my hands had let it go. That's the first thing I remember. Not his face, not hers. Just that stupid box, candles rolling across the office floor, while I stood frozen in a doorway I had no business walking through, uninvited. Except it was his office, and I was his wife, and I'd driven 40 minutes with a smile on my face to surprise him. Hi, my name is Keisha. 8 years I gave that man. 8 years of showing up, covering for him, believing him when other people warned me not to. I remember the drive over, singing along to the radio, checking my lipstick at every red light, actually excited. I drove there thinking he was going to lose his mind when he saw me standing in his doorway. He did, just not the way I planned. What I walked in on told me everything I needed to know in about half a second, and I didn't stop to think, I just moved. I don't remember deciding to grab her. My hands just did it. A blazer, a jacket, I still couldn't tell you. And I hauled her straight out into that hallway where every single person on that floor could see exactly who Jamal really was. Phones came out before I even let go of her arm. Somebody's coffee cup shattered on the tile. Someone gasped so loud it echoed off the walls, and I remember thinking, good, let them all hear this. I didn't care who was watching anymore. 8 years of being the quiet, patient wife, and in that hallway I wasn't quiet for one single second. We're done, I said, loud enough that nobody in that building would ever forget it. I want a divorce. I said it to his face, not hers. She wasn't the one who owed me 8 years. Then I walked out past every single person who used to smile at me in the elevator, got in my car, and sat there gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. No tears yet. Those came later, alone, where nobody could use them against me.
Hi, my name is Skylar. Here's what everyone missed while they were busy staring at me in that hallway. I didn't know he was married. Not a hunch, not a suspicion I ignored. I genuinely didn't know. Weeks before, over dinner, he insisted on expensing to a client account. He told me things were basically over between him and his wife. Just complicated. Court stuff. He just needed the right timing to tell people. I believed him because he never gave me a reason not to. He was careful, calculated. He knew my father ran the company before he ever looked twice at me, and he built himself into someone my father trusted completely, long before he turned that same charm on me. Getting dragged into a hallway half-dressed in front of people who report to me, people who whisper about me in meetings I'm not in, that's not something you just shake off. But standing there afterward, shaking, humiliated, I realized something that made my stomach turn even harder than the affair did. For months, my father had been distant with me. Cold, mentioning concerns about deals I supposedly mishandled. I thought it was office gossip. It wasn't gossip. It was Jamal, feeding my father a story, one lie at a time, while sleeping with the woman he was framing. We didn't plan to talk. I think I was heading to my car and she was trying to remember how to breathe, and somehow we ended up 3 feet apart in that same parking lot. He told me you two were basically done, I said, waiting on paperwork.
This is a case of professional gaslighting. By systematically undermining the victim's credibility, the aggressor isolates them to seize total control of their environment.
He told me you were some junior exec writing her daddy's name to the top. A pause. Neither of us moved. Guess neither of us got the truth.
For a second, I actually hated her. 4 minutes, maybe 5, standing there wanting to blame the woman in front of me because it was easier than admitting the man I trusted had built an entire second life around lying to us both. Then I looked at her. Really looked. And she wasn't the enemy. She was just as blindsided as I was. He's been sabotaging me, I said, at work, making me look incompetent to my own father.
Her jaw tightened. He told me your father was starting to trust him more than you.
Silence. Then, at the same time, almost, he used us. We weren't friends, not yet. But we weren't strangers anymore either, and Jamal had just made the worst mistake of his life without even knowing it. Keisha still had access to old messages, shared accounts, records Jamal thought were long deleted. I had something better. The company's internal project logs, the same ones he'd quietly been editing behind my back. We met at 11 at night in the back corner of a diner that never checked IDs on our sanity. "This one," I said, sliding my laptop toward her. "This deal." He told my father I missed a deadline by 2 weeks. Timestamp says he moved it himself.
I went pale reading it. "There's more. Look at this thread." His words, mocking, careless, thinking nobody would ever see them.
We almost got caught once. His assistant walked past the diner window and Keisha ducked so fast she knocked over her coffee. We sat there afterward, hearts pounding, laughing for the first time since any of this started. Two women who had every reason to hate each other, instead hunting the same monster together. By the time we were done, we had more than enough to end him. We just needed the right room and the right audience to do it. Jamal walked into that banquet hall like a man who'd already won. Tailored suit, easy smile, working the room like he owned every inch of it, shaking hands, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. My father stood at the podium, champagne glass in hand, ready to hand him a promotion he'd spent 2 years quietly stealing from me. I felt my pulse in my throat the entire walk up to that stage. I stood before the applause even started. "1 minute," I said. "Before this goes any further, you need to hear something." The room went dead quiet. That heavy kind of silence where you can hear ice shifting in glasses 3 tables away. I laid it out fast. The edited files, the fabricated deadlines, the dates that didn't add up no matter which way Jamal had tried to spin them to my father for 2 straight years. His smile started cracking around the edges, that easy charm suddenly looking a lot more like panic. And he started stammering something about me twisting things, but nobody was buying it anymore.
Then I stood, holding up my phone, hand shaking just slightly. "You want to hear what he actually thinks of us?" I read his own words out loud to the entire room, calling Skylar naive, calling me foolish for staying loyal to a man who'd already been planning his exit for months.
You could hear a fork drop somewhere near the back. My father's face went from confusion to something I had genuinely never seen on him before. Cold. Absolute. He told security to get Jamal out of the building, and he didn't even raise his voice. Somehow that was worse than if he'd shouted it. Security moved in before Jamal could get another word out of his mouth. He tried anyway, reaching for my father's arm, stammering something nobody was listening to. Not my father. Not the room full of people who'd been smiling at him 10 minutes earlier. Not either of the 2 women he thought he'd successfully kept in the dark forever. Skylar again. It took months to rebuild what he tore down. But I got every project back, and this time nobody questions my judgment. Because this time there's proof. Not just my word against a liar's.
I walked away from that marriage with nothing of his and everything of mine. My name, my dignity, a friend I never expected to make, in a parking lot, on the worst day of both our lives. As for Jamal, last anyone heard, he was still trying to explain himself to people who stopped answering his calls a long time ago. No job, no family, nobody standing beside him when it mattered. He spent years building a life out of other people's trust. Turns out that kind of foundation doesn't hold once the people underneath it start talking to each other.
This illustrates the fragility of a narcissistic facade. Once victims compare their experiences, the aggressor's narrative collapses under the weight of objective, collective truth. If you were in their shoes, would you have chosen professional destruction or a quiet exit? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.